Hey, Age Lead Store fans, I apologize. This week we were not able to get a webinar together. Just so many things going on, so many activities that we had some presentations, one of which I'm going to actually share with you. Didn't have a chance to actually do the webinar that we had intended to. Typically, we do that every Friday. So I did want to bring to you a quick and helpful video. We have been quite a while since we've actually really kind of dug into what Age Leads were, and maybe even just given you a walkthrough, simple tour of ageleadstore.com. And we've had so many more people come into the community over the last couple months and even these last few weeks that I think would be helpful to just sort of step back to the basics, talk about what Age Leads are, how to be successful with them, sort of in a quick, easy. We obviously have all kinds of sales training around this, but want to just give you the high level of that and then take you through a quick and simple tour of what ageleadstore.com is and the unique proposition of allowing you to kind of come on 24/7, browse, filter, look for the leads that you need, and then buy them right there on the spot and get them immediately. So let me take you into a quick little presentation today, and hopefully you get some value out of that. I think a lot of you will get a better understanding of the context of actual Age Leads, where these consumers come from, sort of the mindset, the journey they've been through, and all of that will work together to help with your sales approach and convert these at a better rate. So let me jump into the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And we will bring it up to full screen here. Okay, so like I said, we're going to step back. We're going to talk about ageleadstore.com, which again, unique proposition, the largest lead inventory and real-time available inventory of age leads anywhere on the web. And then, of course, before we do that, I want to talk to and make sure that you understand exactly what age leads are and how to be successful with them. So let's dig in. So this is going to be our overview for today. We're going to talk about building a book of business. That is kind of our primary goal. Even though we are Age Lead Store and we love to sell age leads, that is not our primary mission with you as our client. Our actual primary interest and mission is really to make you successful, to give you a set of tools and a set of customers that ultimately you can build a sustainable business around. That's why we spend so much time and effort on sales training, providing you webinars, providing you sales training articles and videos, and not just sort of handing you consumers and hoping that you're successful with them. We really want to dig in, make you a better salesperson, make you more understanding and aware of these particular consumers that you're trying to serve and how to serve them well and get a bigger and growing book of business out of things like age leads. And of course, all the things we teach you applicable to a bunch of other sales channels as well. But today we're going to talk about building a book of business, particularly with internet or aged leads. So we are going to talk about internet leads. So often we hear about age leads, our internet leads. You probably bought internet leads in the past, but have no idea how they come to be. How that consumer ends up in the hands of a lead provider, and how they ultimately come to you when you buy those internet leads. I think it's so important to really know and understand the source of those consumers, what they were going through, what they were trying to achieve, and then ultimately how they came to be in your call queue or your email queue. Again, a powerful understanding will lead to a lot of success with these type of leads. And then, of course, a subset of that are age leads themselves. What are those? How do they go through the process? What is their experience, the consumers that you're actually reaching out to that you've purchased as age leads? What is their experience? What's the context that you're going to actually be walking into when you approach them with your phone call or again, your email? And then ultimately, all of this works best when there's actually a sales system. A big proponent of building out a sales system. It doesn't have to be terribly complex, doesn't have to have all kinds of expensive or hard to use tools, but there are some basic components, and again, they can be super simple that you can weave together into a process that will give you a sustainable position as you kind of move forward in your sales and grow that book of business. Those basic components are really fourfold. A CRM, we're going to talk about that in a little more detail. This is probably where a lot of people make a mistake. They don't start with a CRM, and so they're kind of trying to work out of their email. There's a lot of reasons to believe that that system breaks down at a very, very small scale, 10 or 15 leads. After that, you probably can't handle it very well in that email. You need a CRM system. Email automation, simply being able to work and meet the needs and serve those people in your database while you're doing other sales activity is super important. Calls and voicemail, you're going to hear in this presentation I have a slightly different philosophy in the way that I think about the value and where a call and a voicemail fits into the sales system. And maybe the position that it represents or the role that it plays in that sales system. And then ultimately, last but not least, is sales scripts. Big believer in structuring sales script. And again, I have a slightly different approach to how I think you should be using sales script, and we'll talk about those. So let's talk about building a book of business. Really, when you think about building a book of business, oftentimes it's kind of this sort of fluffy thing. You're not really sure what that means, but it is as simple as this. You want a database full of contacts. Those can be past clients, those can be prospects, but actually contact information and some information around those individual contacts that allows that database to become the core asset of your business. By working that database, by having that database, by doing good things with the database of potential clients and past clients, you can build a sustainable flow of business month after month after month during all kinds of different cycles of the market, of the unknown. Right now, I'm actually taping this, depending on when you actually hear it. We're in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, and there are people, because they have a solid database and they are continuing to serve clients in a good way, they have a sustainable business, even though there is so much unprecedented sort of market activity and unknowns in the world. They're still able to sustain their business because they have this book of business, because they've built a strong database. Ultimately, we want that database. Its sole function is to create quality lead generation, again, week after week, month after month, year after year. So in order for that database to produce ongoing, sustainable, consistent lead flow, it needs to have a few elements in place, and you need to be doing a few things with it. You can't just set contacts in there and hope that they will turn into sales and revenue. You need to be consistently adding new contacts into that database. Ultimately, database marketing, sales, and any sort of professional services industry, whether we're talking about insurance or mortgage or solar installation or med subs, it requires a very large scale, because only a small percentage of those people in your database at any given time are going to be in the need of or focusing on or have a priority for your particular product or service. So you need a lot of people that you're working on at any given time in order to get those few each and every week and each and every month to turn into sales and revenue. So you need to continue to stock the pond, as we say. You need to be actually doing something with those contacts. You need to be nurturing them with valuable content. This can be phone calls, this can be emails. And when I say valuable content, a lot of you are doing blogs and doing articles, maybe you're doing some videos, maybe you're doing a podcast. There's all kinds of different content that you could produce, but you don't even have to get that sophisticated. When I say delivering valuable content, that means simply calling occasionally and saying, hey, just to let you know, this is going on in the market, or just to let you know, hey, we're moving into our kind of 6-month review period. We should take a look at your coverage and see if anything's changed. You can do the same thing with email. Hey, I was on AARP. I noticed this article. It's sort of about medical supplements and kind of the role that they play. I thought you would be interested in that. So you can even use other people's content, non-competitive, right? Content to show that you're thinking and paying attention to the things that are important to them. And then ultimately they're going to trust, and there's going to be some credibility to kind of reach back out to you so that you can have a conversation about a product or service that you have. In addition to that, you want to bake in a referral system. So in each and every email that you send out, phone calls that you make, you want to make sure that a part of your process is to simply ask for a referral. And that can be, hey, maybe you're not interested right now, but if there's someone that you do come across that is interested, I'd love to know about it. I'd love to help them. Hey, I was able to help you. Hopefully you enjoyed the experience. Would love to know if there's anybody else in your circle of friends and family that maybe could benefit from this service as well. Again, every single conversation that you're having, every single touch point, try to work some manner of referral into that request for a referral into that system. And again, we've got kind of whole training on building out referral systems as well. But you need to think about inside of your database, how do you bake that into the process? Good list hygiene, what this means is making sure that each and every contact inside of that database is as accurate as possible. And that's not, that's a hard thing to do, but you need to be constantly sort of testing and paying attention as you get bounces, take those emails out. If you get phones that are bad, make sure you take those phones out. Nothing more frustrating than a database that is really messy and you come across a lot of bad data. You're just, you know, at any given point, you're going to add bad data in there from a variety of different sources, even real-time internet leads. Potentially, there's going to be some inaccuracies. So as you come across that, make sure you're doing a good job of updating that information, getting new information, and potentially purging stuff that's no longer effective. And we're really talking specifically about phone numbers and emails, a lot of times names even. Oftentimes we get kind of a formal name in there, but instead of Robert, they like to go by Bob. As you encounter that, and you find that information out, make sure you go ahead and update it so that every time that you reach out, every time that you touch people inside of your database, it becomes to feel more and more familiar and natural. And each time it feels a little more personal because of the information that you're adding in there. And again, good list hygiene is what we typically sort of talk about there. Along with this point is notes, 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 notes. Every time that you interact with a lead, whether it be an email or a phone call, you will find out little bits of information, little extra intelligence about that. Maybe they talk about, hey, my kid's getting ready to go off to college. And his name is Bob, right? And just putting in those little incidentals in there that you can kind of check back on the next time you want to reach out, you want to send an email, you want to talk to them, and you say, hey, how's Bob doing in his first semester, right? By putting that note in there, you would never be able to retain or remember that. But if you're good about putting a note every single time, even if it's not terribly interesting or significant to the sale itself, those little bits and pieces of information, again, make that relationship feel stronger, more credible, more trustworthy each and every time you reach out. Ultimately, where do you get the data that you stock into your database? Oftentimes I talk to folks, salespeople that just they're like, I don't have a database. I don't have a lot of people to talk to. Really, that's no excuse, because the data, the consumers, the opportunities are all around you. Start with friends and family. You'll be surprised at the number of people that you know in your circle of friends and family. It's probably 100, 200 or so people that if you actually sat down, wrote their names down, looked through your phone and your contact database on your computer, you cobbled together a couple hundred phone numbers and emails, and that's going to be the start of your database. It's great to reach out. Don't be shy, because even if those people already have their person or they don't need your product or service, most people are more than happy to support you. They want you to do well. And so they're going to pass on your name. They're going to kind of keep you in mind and circulate and start to build that awareness around who you are. And the fact that you're, again, available for this particular product or service. They're going to want to help you out. So don't be shy about that. And then ultimately, networking. Obviously, again, like I said, we're in the middle of sort of the coronavirus point in time right now. And so that's a little bit of a it's kind of hard to do the face-to-face thing, but there are so many different ways that you can do networking online, and building out those skills are so important. So don't neglect that. Talked about referrals and baking that referral into what you're doing and into your database and into each and every contact that you make. And so that is super important as well. It's just baking that referral system in, and that's going to produce new contacts all the time in there as well. And then ultimately leads. So that's what we're kind of here to talk about today, is how to actually get that lead portion in there. Okay, here's my disclaimer that I give every time I present on any of these sales topics, any of these sales tactics, and it's simply that I am not your lead counsel or your compliance officer. So those questions about, can I do this, should I do this, am I allowed to do this, is it appropriate to do this, don't ask me those questions. You need to ask your legal counsel, your attorney, your in-house general counsel, your compliance officer, whoever makes that decision for your business. And it's simply because each and every business out there is slightly different. It operates in a different context, and it has a different sort of interpretation of risk and how all of these things kind of fit together as it pertains to their business. I can't know this about your particular business because I don't know it well enough, nor am I an attorney or a compliance officer. All I seek to do in any of these is to provide knowledge and education and introduce you to the landscape of sales tactics and opportunities and marketing and tool sets that are available. Whether or not you can use them in the context of your business is a question that only you and your legal counsel or your compliance officer can answer for you. So again, everything that I'm about to introduce you to in any video that I do, but this one going forward is simply to introduce you to concepts that are potentially available, but none of these is to tell you to take action. That's something that you're going to have to decide with proper counsel afterwards. All right, so let's dig in. So the first thing that I think is super important to know, and it makes you a better salesperson, is just understanding what internet leads are, how internet providers, people that you buy leads from, come into ownership of or have consumer data that they ultimately sell to you. How does that happen? This is so important for a couple of different reasons. One, it gives you a sense of just the context in which you're approaching the consumer. Also gives you a sense of the journey that they've been on and potentially how best to approach them. And then ultimately, it's just really important for you to know anytime you put a contact in your database, where did that contact come from? And potentially what has that consumer experienced? Because ultimately it's about the individual. It's not just the numbers or the lead moniker. That's a real person. They're going through a real process of needing a service or a product, and you should be servicing that in the best way possible. So this is how internet leads generally happen and come to be, if you will. I'm using NerdWallet just because that's kind of something that probably a lot of you have been on this site or are familiar with. This does not imply that we in any way get our aged leads from NerdWallet, or that NerdWallet is kind of the best place to get your real-time leads from. It's just simply an example that's probably understandable to you, and you can certainly go to NerdWallet and kind of look and even experience the process yourself if you choose to. But whenever an internet lead comes into existence, is born, so to speak, generally what's happening is a consumer has decided, hey, I'm going to buy a house, or a friend of mine told me I should look into whole life insurance, or maybe I think I need, because I'm kind of sitting around talking with all my friends, I need some Medicare supplements added to kind of my mix of things. And so as a result of that, what do people do when they need to figure something out? They take that information that they hear, they go into Google, and then they search for more information to kind of do their research. Oftentimes those searches, because these publishers like NerdWallet use search engine optimization in order to be in the best position in search engines, or use Google ads so that they actually pay to be in the best positions, or maybe they're using Facebook ads in order to kind of show themselves in your newsfeed. And then ultimately, based on your research and your interest, you end up and land on their site, which often looks very similar to this. It's content-based, it's got some information, it tries to answer the question the best they can, and then somewhere along the way, they give you a couple different opportunities to get more information specific to your particular situation. So normally they're in the form of forms, or maybe some tables or some comparison tables, but at the kind of simplest form, they are web forms, or perhaps there's a phone number that you can call. And as you kind of click through these forms and you provide some information information so that you can get more information back as a consumer about that product, or maybe the rate that's available, or potentially the loan that you're eligible for. As you go through that process, you'll kind of go step by step, and you'll answer a series of questions like, what is your zip code? In this case, we're looking at health insurance. What's your age? What's your gender? And they will step you step by step through a set of information where they'll request information, personal information about you, such that they can actually have someone give you a rate quote, or have someone actually quote out a product, or give you information about a product or service that you're interested in. So when you get all the way to the end and you hit that submit button, all of that consumer information is gathered together into one location and ultimately sold to service providers that can meet that consumer's need. And that's all there is to generating an internet lead. So when we talk about internet leads, or you buy a real-time internet lead, that is the process that the consumer went through. So you need to think about that in your sales process and in your marketing process. When you buy an internet lead, there's a couple things that work. One, they actually went in there, they wanted information, they asked for information, they've done a little bit of research, and they're expecting someone to call them back and provide them usually a rate quote or some sort of quote on the type of product that they inquired about. And so that's kind of the whole positioning of internet leads. So now let's go one step further and focus that down to a subset of internet leads, or a subset of just consumer data collection in general, and that is the notion of an aged lead. And really, internet leads and age leads are just kind of a subset of one another, age leads being the subset. And it really is as simple as it is the exact same lead or consumer information that was acquired through that real-time process. The only thing that's changed is it's just slightly older. And really the mindset in the market and sort of the way that marketplace pricing works is that something that is developed and delivered in real time within moments of actually being created, or within a couple of days, is worth more, and therefore the cost of that lead is significantly more. So $20 or so a lead versus something that's just a few days older rapidly sort of loses its perceived value, and therefore the price is literally a very small fraction. You can see our transparent pricing here. So you're going from $20 to like $1. And so there's a significant sort of loss of pricing power, if you will. But let's talk about the benefits of buying age leads. And so oftentimes you might find out, or you may come to the conclusion that maybe age leads are just as valuable, and maybe the real-time leads are slightly overpriced, because they are actually the same lead. The only thing that's changed is there's a little bit more time since that person inquired. So ultimately, what are the benefits of buying leads? Affordable. This is really kind of the biggest and the foremost. This is probably why you even come to be interested in age leads. As you went to a real-time lead provider, they told you how much they were. You're like, I don't have that kind of budget. I can only buy a handful of leads. By the time I got through there, even if I got one to convert, I simply wouldn't be able to make the ROI. So again, a lot of these sorts of channels are, they need scale. You need to buy hundreds of them. You need to buy thousands of them in order to get the small conversion rate, which can be significant at scale and can certainly return an ROI. But if you're starting out, or maybe you've got a smaller operation, a lot of times you just can't afford those real-time leads, and you can't get enough of them to be effective. You can't reach the scale that's necessary for that to return a positive ROI. So by these being more affordable, there's a significant value proposition there. The other thing that is often the case, as I mentioned to you, when they come in real-time leads, they're disseminated to a few different providers that could potentially help that person, usually 2, 3, 4, 5 of those folks. And then what happens to the consumer? All those people, because they paid so much for it, are aggressively on top of contacting that individual. So a lot of times that consumer that definitely wanted information, definitely was interested in a product, just simply becomes overwhelmed. And so one of the value proposition is by letting that age just a little bit, waiting for some days and weeks even to pass, perhaps even a month or so to pass, you're really no longer competing. Most of those processes of people that are built on a sales process of buying and making a profit off of real-time leads, hyper aggressive, but it's only for, you can only sustain that intensity for a short amount of time. So a few days later, 10 days later, they're no longer calling on that lead. And so there's an opportunity for you to no longer be competing like they were with that lead. Kind of mentioned this before, but you just get the volume you need. All sorts of sales industries or sales is just kind of built on volume. You have to do a lot of activity in order to produce the results most of us need from or to get to our sales quota. And so you just simply need a large volume. And so this allows you the opportunity to get all of the volume that you need to keep yourself busy, to keep yourself active, to give yourself enough at bats in order to make the sales you need to make, or potentially to do the same thing for a larger team. As your team grows, that can be a little bit of a burden as you try to keep them all engaged with real opportunities that are sitting there and people with their hands up. They are also excellent for training for all the same reasons, whether it's you or it's a team. The more at bats, the more practice you get in any sort of sport or profession or skill, you're just simply going to get better. The problem with things like real-time leads or trying to do your own SEO or trying to do your own Google ads is you just simply don't have the budget or the ability to get the volume you need so that you can actually train a lot and get your sales process into a better position. This is great. You get a brand new salesperson, you can send them to thousands of dollars worth of sales training, or you can buy $1,000 worth of leads and have them try and practice what you teach them sort of on the job. Have them do it 1,000 times, they're going to get better, right? And so you could potentially have a sales training program that's built around real life training examples using Age Leads instead of sending them to thousands and thousands of seminars and webinars and just listening to somebody drone on and present best practices, but they don't actually get to practice it. And then I can't reinforce enough the fact that they're just simply affordable. Okay, so let's talk about, before we kind of jump into and actually look at the Age Lead store itself, the number one sort of secret to success with these leads, Age Leads, or really any sorts of leads, particularly internet-based leads, is really having a sales system built around that database and making sure that that sales system is maximizing the work and the activity that you are applying against all of those opportunities in there. The components of that sales system are fairly simple. You need to have a process. You probably should write it down and sort of suss through it. It usually needs automation because, again, as you're doing some physical manual things, calls and those sorts of things, you want some automation working with you as well, because it just doubles, triples, exponentially increases the amount of activity that you're doing each and every day, each and every week, each and every month. That automation helps you to get to scale. Again, we need to work in large numbers in order to give us probably what your revenue targets are. And scale is significant. And then once you've got that system working, you want to be able to make it repeatable so that you can actually make it larger, maybe for yourself, or potentially add team to that repeatable process and make sure that everybody's doing it the same way and that your successes are consistent. Ultimately, in order to implement that 4 steps of kind of a sales system, you're going to need a set of tools to support that. And again, that comes down to CRM. Don't underestimate the need and the power for CRM to have everything in that database. Use all those features of the CRM in order to implement that automation and the process that you conceived of so that, again, that CRM, that database is being worked even while you sleep. Email automation, big component of that. Again, based on some rules and some campaigns and some triggers that you set out, you want this to kind of be going out automatically. And email is a great way to do that, building those campaigns and making sure that they automate out. You can use all sorts of techniques around triggers and segmentation to make it more and more personal, but just simply allowing those emails to go out without you always having to sit down, write a new email, think about it, send it to each person individually. You can really make some scale and efficiency out of that. Calls and voicemails. I think about these a little bit different. The fact of the matter is nobody answers their phone anymore, particularly from somebody that's not in their contact database or their contact area of their phone, or they just simply aren't familiar with the phone number. In fact, a lot of these phones, particularly mobile phones, are allowing you to turn on a feature that just says, hey, if they're not in my contact database, then simply don't let it ring through, right? So there is a good chance that you are not going to actually connect with somebody on your calls. Are they no longer important? I would say absolutely that is not the case. You do need to make your calls. And then I advocate actually leaving your voicemails, because that is an easy way to get in front of them. And so I look at calls and voicemails and the hearing of your voice, the mention of your name, the mention of your company, as a brand awareness. It's almost like marketing now. So I encourage you to leave those voicemails. You can, again, create some efficiencies here with things like voicemail drops and ringless voicemails to make that, again, a little bit easier to accomplish at large scale. But I advocate it for a couple different reasons. Again, it's going to come onto the phone. They're going to read it. They're going to see your name. Most of these things translate, your voicemails in text. And so they read it. They see your brand name. They see your name again. Then they know that you're interested. They may actually hear your voice. They can hear the empathy. They can hear the energy in it. And all these things are going to combine to create a good perception of you. Of course, you don't want to bang the heck out of them. So you want to create a call program that looks nice and natural. And again, you're trying to serve them. That's what it should feel like as they get it on the phone. So your calls, your voicemails, almost like a branding campaign. So do that in a good way. Make sure you clearly mention your name, clearly mention your company, so that that starts to build up some impressions inside their brain. So the next time you actually connect or reach out to them with email or maybe some other methods of contact, they're going to start to grow an affinity for your name and your brand, and truly sort of trust and increase their trust in your credibility. Sales scripts, again, big believer in sales scripts themselves. Again, for a couple different reasons. A lot of people do it because they want everybody to say the same thing, and they kind of get focused on reading it. I don't actually advocate reading the sales script. What I think the role of sales scripts is, it lets you kind of think through your sales process, your value proposition, how you want to deliver that message to everybody that you talk to, even the people that you communicate through with email. Sales scripts are a good process there. It keeps you tight and succinct as you actually leave voicemails. If you just feel like, hey, I'm a natural, I can just kind of, I can wing it, I can do it off the cuff, you're going to find out your voicemails are sort of droning and end up being a couple minutes long. You're going to actually enter into conversations, you're going to be caught off guard, and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't expect to hear a voice. But if you use sales scripts, and you practice them in front of a video camera like this, or in front of a mirror, you practice them over and over again, you make them your own. All of those situations and the scripts that you write related to those situations are going to make you feel so much more confident and comfortable and natural when you have those discussions and encounters. And this comes to the last thing that I want to sort of advocate when you're thinking about a script. Again, a script is not something you memorize word for word. When I think of scripts and when I teach people about using a sales script, I think more in terms of a movie script. So when a scriptwriter sits down, they write out the whole movie, they write out a script, they have all this beautiful dialogue and everything. And then a really good actor takes that script, they read it, they consume it, they sort of put themselves into that character, and then they become the character, and then they use that script and those discussions to make it their own voice. And so as a result, that script they completely ingest, make it a part of who they are, put themselves in the character, and then they deliver it. And so if you were to look at an A-list actor and listen to his dialogue, watch the movie, and then go to the script, it's not going to match word for word, but you're going to see the essence of what was written here is conveyed probably even better in the delivery by the actor. So that's what you need to do with a sales script. Write it, think about it, take it, consume it, make it your own, become that character, and then become very comfortable and confident in delivering it. Okay. For some reason, it's not moving forward in my slide presentation. There we go. Okay, anyway, at this point, we would normally do questions. Of course, I'm not doing this live. Look at there, there's actually a coupon code for a presentation that we did earlier this week. I'm going to quickly take that off the screen, but if you're quick enough to get it, you can get 20% off your order there. If you need my contact information, you can get that right there. You can reach out to myself or Troy, who handles all of the lead orders. So let's go over and talk a little bit about, I'm gonna take this off the screen before Troy yells at me for the discount. And let's talk about ageleadstore.com itself and give you a little bit of a tutorial of how to order leads and how to go through this process. So there's a couple of different features on here before we go into how the lead ordering works that should create a lot of value and benefit. If you're looking to buy leads, you can just simply go to buy leads. You can pick any sort of lead vertical or type that you need to support and grow your business. You can go down here and browse leads. It'll kind of take you to the same place. The thing that I want to kind of point out to you is there's this nice little form here. Oftentimes before you feel comfortable actually going in there and buying some leads, you probably have some questions. Maybe you want to know more about the leads. Maybe you want to know about how to use the leads, or maybe some of the sales best practices in doing that. If you have any questions that are preventing you from ordering or feeling comfortable ordering, I encourage you to fill out this form and ask us those questions as candidly as you want to, or just give us a phone call, and we're going to be hyper responsive to both of those, because like I said, our number one goal is not to just sell you leads, it's for you to be successful with those leads. So if you have any questions, don't hold them back. Call us or fill out that form, and we will get our best answer back to you. The other part that I want to point out on this site, there's some other stuff down here, ebooks to help you with open enrollment. There's a couple other resources down here, but I want to point out the sales training blog. Everything on this blog is sales training. So all of the content that we produce is not around age leads and buying leads. It's actually around how to actually be a better salesperson and be successful with the leads in the Age Leads channel, or any channel, by the way, that you might use. So we've got mortgage training, we've got insurance training, we've got a little bit of solar installation. We'll probably be building that out more, but it's all training just in general around sales, and also very specific to some verticals. So I encourage you to get into that sales training blog, or to sign up for our newsletter. And that newsletter goes out every single week. That's how you get these videos and those sorts of things. So encourage you to get on our newsletter as well. You can subscribe right there. We should probably put that higher on the page, but encourage you to get on that newsletter as well. So let's go ahead here and do an example of buying leads, so you can kind of see how easy this is, how you can do it 24/7, whenever you need leads, whenever you need to stock or help out your sales pipeline. This is a place to go. So it's really as simple as this. The first thing that I always encourage people to do is go ahead and log in. If you don't have a login already, it's going to encourage you or ask you to register so that you actually have an account on the system. So even if you're not ready to order leads at this particular time, go ahead and set up that profile, that registration, so that it's ready to go when you do order. Now you can go through here and do all the filtering and browsing that you want, but at the end, if you get sort of a set that you want to pull those leads, you want to actually buy those leads, if you haven't set up that account or you haven't logged in yet, oftentimes there can be a little bit of a disconnect and can cause you problems. So I encourage you, go ahead and register. It doesn't cost you a thing. That way you have an account, and go ahead and log in before you start to do your browsing and filtering. So let's say I'm looking to do a little more in my sales this month around auto insurance leads. Go in here, we've got all kinds of different ages, but you know, for a variety of reasons, I probably don't want to go too old. I want to make sure all this information is as current and their intent is as current as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and select between 30 and 90 days. That's what most customers do. We're going to go over here. As I go through these, it's going to save all my filters and all my preferences. This is another benefit to being logged in. All this will kind of get saved for you. I'm going to go into my states. I'm actually in Michigan. So I'm going to unclick those, and I'm just going to pick Michigan, and that way my licensing is appropriate. I'm going to get leads just for areas that I'm licensed in. Age, if you're doing things like medical supplements, age can be important, so there is an opportunity for filtering there. Zip codes, a lot of times most of our licensing is statewide, and you can actually do business throughout the state, so oftentimes the zip codes don't come into play. But if you want to be more targeted, or maybe there's so many leads that you can actually just kind of go down to your individual zip code, you can certainly do a specific zip code there. If you're in the insurance business and you're looking to sort of take business from your competitors, sometimes you can actually filter by carrier. And then phone options, the default is just to make sure you got a phone number on every record. Could be cell, could be landline. I encourage you just to use the default, but if you got a preference otherwise, you can certainly do that. Then once you reach this, each one of those filters as you've gone across here have been saved, and you're going to simply get a count. Sometimes this can take a couple minutes. It's going through our database. It's looking for leads in that category. You can see in this case, we've got almost 10,000 leads in this category. That may be more than you want. You can certainly then take this and say, hey, I only want to grab 1,000 of those for this month. And then you simply add them to your cart. Now, I want to pause here for a second and encourage kind of one of the number one things that people don't understand is if you go in here, maybe you've niched it down so specific, or you got into a zip code that's very specific, or for whatever reason you don't, maybe you're supporting a really large team and you don't see enough leads. You want to buy 15,000 of these leads, and there's only 9,824 here. Don't sort of walk away unfulfilled. We want to serve you the best possible. And so I encourage you, if you don't see the leads that you need, or you don't see enough, or you have questions once you get to this point, or for whatever reason you might get an error. If you get an error, encourage you to call or email us, and we will solve that problem for you. We'll get rid of the error. We'll help you through that order process. If you don't have enough leads, or we can't find enough leads in the database itself, we will go out to our providers and we will attempt to get those leads. And more cases than not, we can actually fulfill that request and get you what you need. And then going forward, we'll make sure that those are in the database and available to you so that they're there month over month. So I encourage you to do that. Hopefully all of this has been helpful, gives you a little bit of a refresher on what age leads are, how they kind of come about, the best way, best practices to actually sell, and then ultimately hope and encourage you to go into the Age Leads store, do some browsing, grab some counts, and figure out if this is the right way and the right channel to add into your sales mix to make you successful each and every month. Encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to go to our website, get on that newsletter, and we'll see you next time.